to change the world, to change the way things are, you need 10% of the population 100% committed to the truth.
So 2 out of 3 breaths, or maybe 3 out of 4 breaths that you take come from the phytoplankton. And the phytoplankton is now being penetrated by the plastic.
William Blake said to see the world in a grain of sand. And to me, it's like you can look at, all the issues in the ocean were kind of, you could talk about them in this little cove in Japan.
So Louie, if you would join us up here, and I'm going to set the stage. So Louie and I met somewhere back in the aughts after he had produced a movie called The Cove and won the Oscar, and then held up a sign before they dragged him off stage, text. But what's interesting about that is that Louie put the spotlight on the dolphin slaughter in Taiji, Japan. And since that movie came out and won the Oscar, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Louie, that dolphin slaughter has come down 90%. So maybe you can talk about that a little bit. And just to say that Louie kind of, at that moment, kind of almost invented activist filmmaking, or at least gave it a big shot forward.
All right. Yeah. Sitting or standing? I'm good.
Either way.
Yeah, we're always looking for a lever. Well, first of all, I don't think of myself as a filmmaker. I think the North Star of what we're trying to do, I'm really in the change the world business. It's like, I try to think, how can you use art, photography, these projection events, I'll show you some things that we've been working on to change the world. And when we did the Cove was the first film I did, and people said, "You're gonna make a film about a dolphin slaughter and make it popular? It's gonna be crazy." And said, "Why do you want to do that?" I said, "Well, I want to stop what's going on over there. They're killing 23,000 dolphins a year. They were eating them, and it was unconscionable to me." And that film, a film about a dolphin slaughter, became the most winning documentary in film history. It was the first film in history to sweep all the film guilds, won about 100 awards from Sundance to the Academy Awards. But the North Star was, I didn't even know that there was some of these awards, but the goal was to stop what's going on. It's still going on, like Chip says, but it's down over 93% since that film started. And then that's when I met Chip, and we worked on this film called Racing Extinction, which was about the Anthropocene. And that film, God, probably changing things up quite a bit here. Well, anyway, that film was about the Anthropocene, and the idea was like, how do you stop what's going on? There's 5 major extinctions in the history of the planet. We're going through a 6th one right now. It's caused by us. And most people never, remember this is over 10 years ago, most people hadn't even heard of that. So the question was, how do you get people to know about it? Okay. And well, if we have 12 minutes.
No, we're gonna have actually 15, so that we have a half an hour here.
Oh,
so
okay.
Go ahead, just.
Okay, good.
Ahead.
Okay,
we'll
well,
end at 5:30
I was
today
going
for
to talk
everybody
quick because we have an 8-minute video to show. It's like,
right.
wow. And we did there's some really good science that shows that to change the world, to change the way things are, you need 10% of the population 100% committed to the truth. And you can look at, they did models with the civil rights movement, the suffragette movement, Arab Spring, and they all work. It's not 8%, it's not 7%, it's 10% of the population 100% committed. That's the goal. And to get, let's say, 10% of the world's population aware of what's going on and doing something about it, that's 750 million people. That's really tough to get that many people to see a documentary. So we did these projection events. We were working with Mia and their group, and we had we projected as part of that film. I knew we couldn't get 750 million people to see a documentary, but we might get 10% of the population of the planet to see a projection event if we did something big and audacious. So we projected endangered species on the Empire State Building, which nobody had ever done before. And we had, and at that point we had only projected on the United Nations, and our distributor at the time said, well, it's good enough, you don't need to do the Empire State Building. And the city of New York, we did it right during COP, or no, sorry, it was during, what do you call it, the UN General Assembly, when world leaders were there. And the UN is really considered, it's not even part of the United States. But the New York police have control over the property in front of it. And they said they would shut us down if we had over, I think, 2,000 people there. So we didn't get a lot of people to see it. So I wanted to do the project on the Empire State Building. Distributor said, well, it's like the film's good enough without that. I still persisted. We had, and we ended up doing it. And we had 939 million people watch it in 5 days. It was the top trending story on Facebook and Twitter for 4 days worldwide. And more importantly, it wasn't just about the eyeballs. It was about what's the actionable thing. And that film, we used these projection events to actually get referendums during that election cycle to ban the trafficking of endangered species in the western ports of the United States. And that happened in all 4 western states, Washington, Oregon, California, and Hawaii. And now because of that film and the referendum, those endangered species aren't trafficked into western ports anymore. So that's, that was the goal, is like, how do you get enough people to create action? That's
And Louie, I think the Pope saw the projections on the Empire State Building and asked you to come down to do the same thing on the Vatican when we were over in Paris doing the Paris Agreement. I couldn't make it down there because I was running around up in Paris in my suit going to all these different events and so forth. But what happened there?
This wasn't scheduled, but in that little video I sent you, there's one that's called The Vatican. Can you access that? It was on.
Anyway, I think that when Louie did the Vatican, he had 250,000 people in St. Peter's Square, and I think we got something on the magnitude of 4.5 billion media impressions. Isn't that right?
Yeah, it was funny because we thought when we did the Empire State Building, we thought, oh, we can't do any better than that. And then the Pope called.
So the last time I checked, we have about 8 billion people on the planet. So now that figure out a mechanism to at least access mass consciousness, where do we go from here?
Well, with fossil fuels, people, I guess in this room know who I am and what I've been trying to do. I've been rallying against fossil fuels for I have a 2002 Toyota RAV, that was fully electric. I wanted how can we scale this up? How can we ramp it up? And we've been working with these projection events for quite a while. Just before this last at UNGA, UN General Assembly, we just did a projection event with. We were trying for about 2 years to do a projection event. Then, what happened? Russia invaded Ukraine 2 years ago, so that took it off the shelf. Then right before that we had COVID, and so somebody said to me, "You should do a drone show." And I thought, drone show, even if you have 1,000 drones, that's like a kilobyte, right? And my images are all like 151 megabytes, and I thought, well, how effective can you be with like 1,000 points of light? And I work out with, I live over in the San Francisco area in the Bay, and I work out with Bobby Weir. And when they did the drone show here in Boulder, and I thought, oh, that's really spectacular. And so I was working out with Bobby, and I said, "Can you connect me with who did the drone show?" He says, "Yeah, I'll get you in touch with Kimball." I said, "Kimball Musk?" He says, "Yeah, he's my neighbor across where I used to live." So I called up Kimball, and he said, "Yeah, let's do this." And we had about 2 months to set it up, but the whole thing happened. All the creative happened in about 2 weeks. And let's set that up if we can. If we can, it'd be great if we move off the stage.
Yeah, let's see the drone, and then we can talk about it afterwards. Okay?
Yeah, and then if we can turn off the lights on the stage, so it'd be so we can see the colors.
Chairs out of the way too, since there's only 2 of us. While Louie's finding that, I'll just tell you that in 2010, I invited Louie to come to AREI-AREDAY and join James Cameron, who had Avatar in the movie theater, and Louie had just won the Oscar for the drum. So we had Louie and James, and then the next year, Louie said, well, I'm making a movie called, I think it was called Ocean's 11 or something like that. or something, a takeoff on that. And he says, I got this really amazing, vegan race car driver, and it's going to be this, sort of, Anyway, that's what became Racing Extinction, but he actually came up and filmed some sequences with some of the talking heads up at the AREI-AREDAY in 2011, so I'm really proud and happy that we could help put some of the folks into that film. And I want to make sure we have enough time to get to talking about the film that Louie's making now on plastic, because this plastic pollution, I went to a speech by Twiggy Forrest, who's also known as Andrew Forrest. He's the richest guy in Australia, a mining magnate, but he decided to go back to school and get his PhD in plastic, or at least understanding that. And I saw him give a lecture about how the microplastics are breaking down to the extent where they're penetrating the singular cell membranes of the phytoplankton in the ocean. And the phytoplankton in the ocean are responsible for about 70% of the oxygen. That is the photosynthetic engine of the planet Earth's. So 2 out of 3 breaths, or maybe 3 out of 4 breaths that you take come from the phytoplankton. And the phytoplankton is now being penetrated by the plastic. So that's the solid oil spill part of this dialogue. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm done. Great.
Ready?
Nice. Wow.
Well,
All right.
I just want to do a shout out to Jay Ashry, who is here from the United Nations. We've been working with her for a dozen years, and she's been our biggest supporter within the UN. So I was really surprised to see you here. I thought you might be coming in virtually.
Coming to get you.
Yeah.
Okay, so just take a seat, Louie, and just talk us through, if you would, how those drones that you put up over the East River in front of the United Nations, like right before all the world leaders came a couple weeks ago. I was supposed to be there. I couldn't make it because I was doing this, by the way. How does that impact New York and Climate Week?
Well, I mean, boy, the amount of, well, first we, UN, thank you. That was great. The Mayor Eric Adams is in the next Netflix documentary I've been working on, so he was a big supporter. I thought, okay, you have the UN, you have the city of New York, the mayor, great. And then, but we needed the, state parks, which was we launched the drone show from. Then you needed the Coast Guard to stop all the traffic. You needed FAA approval because it's the UN. Before world leaders come in, you need Homeland Security, Secret Service, boy, and we had like 8 agencies, federal, state, and local playing together. I thought that's great. 2 days beforehand, an agency I hadn't heard of called New York City Events, who controls like Macy's Day Parade, said, we don't know anything about this. Then they try to shut us down, and then the mayor's office stepped in with state parks and basically said, okay, you can't advertise it, but you can. We'll give you half a night instead of 2 days. So we had to sort of smooth down all the people that had paid for this and had it.
Yeah. But for the guy that actually, snuck into Taipei, Japan with like nighttime, covert operations with black paint on his face and took a crew into the Beijing wet markets, this wasn't actually as tough as you might think, right?
Yeah, that was, well, we had very little chance of being arrested for this one.
You didn't have any button cameras.
We had the police on our side.
You didn't have button cameras that you had to like, hide out and make sure people weren't looking at and stuff. So Louie, I mean, thank you so much for your activism, for your leadership, for your commitment to decarbonizing the planet. And I remember when I asked you, like, is that what the Cove, I mean, is that really about dolphin slaughter? You said, no, man, it's about the carbon that's building up in the ocean. And I went, what?
It's about a lot of things. I mean, the Cove, William Blake said to see the world in a grain of sand. And to me, it's like you can look at, all the issues in the ocean were kind of, you could talk about them in this little cove in Japan. We're taking our counterparts who have bigger brains than us. They're sentient, they're intelligent, and we're eating them. You could talk about overfishing because the Japanese fisheries were saying, oh, the dolphins are eating all the fish. And why shouldn't we be eating them? The Japanese would say, well, you eat cows, pigs, and chickens over here. What's wrong with dolphins? And I'd say, well, it's true. We shouldn't be eating cows, pigs, and chicken from my standpoint. I'm a vegan, but if our chickens had 5,000 times more mercury than allowed by law, I would say don't eat your chickens. And that's what's happening with dolphin meat over there. All the dolphin meat that's been tested in the last 20 years in Japan has in it between 5 and 5,000 times more mercury than allowed if it was a fish. Of course, these are mammals, but they're toxic. And they were force feeding them to school kids for school lunch programs. In Japan, you have to eat everything on your plate, and you can't bring in an outside lunch. So the kids were being force-fed toxic meat for school lunch programs. So to me, it was like a no-brainer.
Okay, so I think that we talked about doing some clips of your new movie on plastic. Is that going to happen?
Yeah, let's do it.
I want to add some. Can I take a quick poll here? I want Andy Quiet to be able to present his RICO because this is a really important, this racketeering presentation. But I also want to add some time to this presentation. So that is okay with the audience that we push it to. We're going to close tonight at 5:45, and I'm going to ask you all to come back here at 7:30. But I think everybody's fat. We could come back, and I guess we could open up the Lakota film with the rest of this. Okay, Andy, come on up and do your thing, and we'll come back.
All right. Okay.
Good. So you guys, if you want to come back and see Louie's, is it Apple TV or Netflix? Yeah, but so Louie's making a film on what's happening in the plastic in the ocean. I think it's something we really want to actually have. So this panel will be continued at 7:30. Perfect solution, right?